Hello, my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This will scan for OS discovery, Script SMD OS discovery for Windows Server 2016 we scan, and then SMD OS discovery result Windows Server 2016 standard. Now we have to scan beyond IDS and IPS firewalls. Scan beyond IDS and firewall. As a professional ethical hacker or a penetration tester, the next step after discovering the operating system of the target IP address is to perform network scanning without being detected by the network security parameters such as the firewall, IDS, IPS, firewall. Uh, so, to launch the attack, you have to evade the IDS and IPS. So in this lab, we will be scanning beyond IDS firewall using various evasion technique, create custom packets, create custom UDP TCP packet using HPing3, scan beyond IDS firewall. These are included in the lab. So there is a method called decoy. Decoy is generally manually specifying IP address of the decoy so that IDS and firewall cannot determine the actual IP address. If certain IP address is blocked, then we use decoy. Decoy is like a fake IP address or manually giving a different IP address which is not the actual IP address. The firewall will think that I have to block this certain IP address, but if we use decoy, that way this is a technique of bypassing the firewall. Similarly, spoofing or using proxy server anonymizers or bad checksums we can use to bypass the firewall. So there are various evasion techniques. For that we'll use Nmap GUI, not GUI. We'll use Nmap. This is GenMap, graphical user interface. But now we'll use Parrot command line interface. And Parrot will open a terminal. Login as root user and type Nmap. Tap for fragmentation. And our IP address for Windows 10 this time 10.10.10.10. Now app switch is used to split the IP packet into tiny fragments. So we are using Nmap along with app switch. Yeah, the type is wrong. Nmap. The F switch is like used to bypass the firewall. So what he does is like there is a packet for different packet. It is fragmented into tiny parts so that firewall cannot think that this is a something scan is going on. So it will give you this. For this example is like carrying. Suppose there is in the airport you are carrying like a gun, then the security alert will definitely catch that this person is carrying a gun in a metal detectors or X-ray scanning. But if you take certain parts of gun broken down into suppose 5 parts, and first part one person will take, and then 2-3% like some other people will go, random people, and then after third person, then again one parts will come. So this way, like one part, they will try to evade the security mechanism, that is the metal detector. It's just an example actually. Suppose if he makes a gun non-metal out of plastic and break it into different fragments and try to pass it one by one to the security check. So this way, it can bypass the security mechanism. So similarly, this is F switch is used to split the IP packet into tiny fragment. For that packet fragmentation, this is called packet fragmentation, where packet fragmentation refers to the splitting of a probe packet into several smaller packet fragments while sending into the network. When this packet reaches to a host, IDS and firewall behind the host generally queue all of them and process them one by one. However, since this method is of processing involves greater CPU consumption as well as network resources, the configuration of most IDS makes it skip fragment packets during port scanning. So this way we can able to bypass a firewall and carry over scanning. And there is actually we can mention source port also. Like suppose the certain port is open and certain port is allowed. So we will try to uh, give nmap type nmap g source port 80 and try to scan again. So it gives source port option. It manipulates the port and let them think that the genuine port is trying to access the connection. Suppose HTTP port or FTP port. And again, there is a technique for evading firewall called MTU, maximum transmission unit, where nmap will type nmap MTU 8. Number of maximum transmission unit MTU specifies this. So if we say MTU 8, this can also be used to bypass a certain firewall security mechanism. Again, we can use random decoys. Here we will use option D for decoy and random IP address R and D 10. So it will give 10 different IP address, and when we scan the 10.10.10.10, so it will scan with different IP address. So if we scan with random decoy 10, we can open Wireshark in and check that how the decoy scan is carried out. So here, if we try to scan again, so it will take like fake random 10 IP addresses. If we check here our if config IP address of this machine, so this is 10.10.10.13. So if we go to Windows 10 and check for 10.10.10.13, we won't find suppose 10 dot. Like for example, here it is clearly shown. Suppose actually it's supposed to come from 10.10.10.13, but decoy using decoy, so it's giving different IP address, which firewall cannot understand, and it will let pass the traffic so that port scanning can be carried out with this method as well to bypass firewall. So destination is 10.10.10.10, but starting with 10.13, and then we have these several other different IP addresses that are used as a decoy by the Nmaps decoy scanner. So here, if you check source all 10, and then these are other different IP address. In between, like it will try to send decoy anonymous a different IP address. Similarly, we can use hping3 as a scanning tool. Generally, hping3 doesn't send ICMP packets. It can be used to bypass firewall. H3, if we scan 10.10.10.10, So there is another module actually entirely covered to bypass the IDS and IPS. Will be covered in module 11. It is chapter 11. Here, there is another like the entire module will be discussing about different like bypassing techniques, and we'll discuss in detail. Now we'll move to enumeration. We will do enumeration about the same network. Before that, here we discuss about ICMP ping swift, where we gather information whether the host is alive or not. For that, there is a command called SNPE to check the host is alive or not. It can be carried in GenMap. There are different host discovery technique, whether the computer is on or off, whether it is listening to or not. We can use Nmap SNPP target IP address for ICMP timestamp ping scan. Similarly, we can TCP sync ping scan, TCP acknowledgement ping scan, IP protocol ping scan. These are different scanning techniques. We discuss about EXMA scan. In Nmap and GenMap, we can do EXMA scan by giving hyphen small s capital X. Then fin scan small s capital F. Null scan Maymod scan. This scan we can use. Null scan we can choose the profile directly. Similarly, Maymod scan and time to leave base scan, Windows scan, SW, SM, SW will be Windows scan. So there is a half open scan, inverse scan, acknowledgement scan, idle scan, TCP full open scan, and it can be scanned via TCP method, UDP, and these are other scanning methods. There are some tools actually for Windows. You can download and check. TCP full open scan where attacker sends synchronization packet and the target says synchronization and packet, and then attacker acknowledges it. Then after that, attacker reset the connection. This is a full open scan, and this is visible. Actually, communication is established between attacker and target. So this is a TCP full open scan. But in case of half open scan, the communication doesn't establish between attacker and target, so it is called half open scan. This is half open scan. EXMA scan, Namon scan, where attacker sends fin and acknowledgement probes. If it is open filtered, but if reset, then the port is closed. If open filtered, the port is open. Attacker flag probe scan. Acknowledgement flag probe scan, where attackers send TCP probe packet set with a acknowledgement flag to a remote device and then analyze the header. So there are a lot of different scans. Whichever is applicable, you can try. But if you scan, there will be firewall and these things. So it will block and block the IP address. So it is better to send manually scan the packets